Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us out on a limb with Gabby Allen. I am super excited today to have Christina Strigas with us. And oh, this is going to be so much fun. Not only does she write novels, but she also does poetry. And so I am really, I wrote horrible poetry when I was in high school, as I think most people do. And so I can't wait to dive in on this one. So Christina, if you could tell us what is it that you do, and then if you want to share a little bit about how you do it, and then we'll just start rolling.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. It's exciting. Yeah. I love doing little podcasts like this and getting to know people and them getting to know me. So yeah. I'm a writer and a poet and a teacher. So as a writer, I have novels and I have poetry books out. So right now I have 4 self-published poetry books out. My latest one is Love and Metaxa that I just published last month in June. And actually in July, so yeah, July. And the one coming out September 27th with Wild Rose Press is called The Wanting. And that's a re-release of an older novel that I wrote a few years ago with another publishing company. So I'm very excited about that. And they're also re-releasing Crush, which is a paranormal romance novel. So that's coming out in October.
That is awesome. So The Wanting, is that also a paranormal novel, or is that
it's different? It's more of an erotic romance novel.
Oh, okay.
More literary fiction. So that's what The Wanting is. And Crush, that's in October, is a paranormal romance novel with vampire, a little twist on that tale.
Vampires. I always enjoy vampires. It's so funny to me. I saw something on Facebook the other day and they're like, look, I love the vampires that are 300 and 400 years old, but can we get one that was turned in like 1990? It's like, oh, I don't know how, like, if you, because you know, a lot of times the ones that are 300 and 400 years old, they still have the customs from when they were turned. They have sometimes the dress mode that when they were turned. So if you were going to turn somebody in 1990, would they still be like watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? You know what I mean? So your vampires, are they older?
That one for Crush, which is coming out in October, that is like it's more of it's a girl story about her turning into a vampire and a love affair that she has, and it goes back. There's flashbacks into the 80s and present time, so it goes back and forth. And then there's the actual vampire himself, and we get to the history of 100 years ago and how he turned into a vampire and the whole process. Which I kind of I made up a lot of stuff. I didn't. Yeah, I made up a lot of my own ideas. I don't know. Yeah, I just went a little off with that. I did research. I had Post-it notes, and I was just creating my own ideas of how to turn into a vampire. I didn't want to just recreate the same old stuff you hear and you see over and over again. And I went into a little bit of Greek folklore. And I researched a little bit of, and the setting is a little bit more foreign. So the setting is in St. Tropez a little bit and Santorini and the lost city of Atlantis. And it's a love story, but it's more of, it has a twist. I won't say what exactly.
Don't ruin it for us. Don't ruin it for us, because I want to read that.
It's an interesting little twist of a tale that came to me one day. And this one that's coming out, The Wanting, well, that came about as a poem. So I just started writing in my journal one day. I started writing this poem.
Okay.
People writing these love letters to each other, but not knowing each other. And I just started getting into writing in the first person with these 2 different characters, like a male and a female. And then I put it aside. I put it away. And then years later, I turned to it and I said, this should be an interesting book. Let me see what I could do with it. And I just took the prologue and the way the story starts is actually the poem that I wrote, and I made it into prose.
That is so cool.
So, that's the first one. It goes into his story. So what happens is I didn't really want them to. It was about them, but not about them. So it's how he meets somebody else and he meets somebody else at the same night, but they don't, and it's their relationship and they're both sexual awakening, but they both want each other, and then just. Things transpire, and then she realizes, the character, what's love, what's sex, are we soulmates, do we even exist, what kind of sexual awakening do we have with other people as opposed to the person that you're with, and are we confusing these emotions, you know? So these two
I love
characters.
that. And so
Yeah.
is that why you feel it's more of a literature as opposed to
Well,
a
that's
genre?
it, because it doesn't follow the same genre, and it's not really cookie cutter, you know,
Oh,
boy
okay.
meets girl. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it has a
No,
little bit of a
that's
of a different
awesome.
take, right? Because it's not really, they kind of meet up later on in the novel. It's not really about their sexual energy. It's not at all.
Okay.
It's just theirs is more a spiritual connection. You
Yes.
know what I mean? So that's
Yes.
why. And I write a lot of prose when I write. It's more and dialogue, a lot of dialogue, character
Yeah.
development. This one, and it's about, and the setting is Montreal. So I'm familiar with Montreal. So
Yes.
you know what I mean? Sometimes I
Yeah.
like to read the setting so that it's here. So it's a
Yes.
little for people. I like that. People like to read about different cities, and
Yes.
it's and she's a writer. So
Oh, very fun.
yeah.
Very fun. Now, so going forward, just like in your career, obviously you have the poetry and the 4 books, and I'm going to come back to that because I want to talk poetry. But so now so you're going to have like an erotic literature coming out. You have a paranormal romance coming out. Do you feel like you're going to keep going in the
Well,
3 directions, or do you
it's
feel like you'll focus?
this is the thing with the creative energy and the writing process. All right, I had
Yes.
because I have a manuscript that I've been working on. I've changed it and I've rewritten it about 20 times. Now I think it's maybe the 5th draft, and that one is what I've been working on all the time and throughout the summer. But then what happened is with Wild Rose Press, there was this chat. You know, they have the chats at 8 p.m.
They're awesome.
They're awesome. So
yes.
one of them was about creating a 30K word count romance.
Oh.
No. Oh yeah, for one of the lines, a Scarlet line, I think. Anyways, and so it was, but just for 30K word count, but like a series of books.
Yes.
So after I got off of that chat, for some reason I was just inspired, and I thought, I could try this, because it's a little, you know, they give you what we want. We want a foreign city. We want the character to fall in love. We want this. Let me try it out. It's like a prompt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And the 30 word count, it's doable. I'm in the summer, so I could do it. I pretty much, and I did write one of them.
Right.
And I thought the whole series. So I have these characters that I created in my head based on that couple, right? And their milieu, whoever they're with. So that's what I did. I wrote it. I sent it to Rhonda or Diana, sure. And then now I'm going to hear back from her and see if they're interested to do this whole series, which
that is awesome.
Cool. I've never done that before. I never wrote. I mean, it's erotic romance, so I know how to write that genre because of the wanting. Right. And in my poetry, it's very erotic, some of it. So I like romance, and there's always romance in my books. Yeah. Romance and a little bit of erotic, but not too much, you know. But I like that genre. So
that's awesome.
So I started that. Yeah, I started that. So I'm curious to see if how that goes, because now I want to start the 2nd book and try to do a series. That would be cool. I've never done that.
Okay, I love series.
I've never done that.
I have I don't even know. I think I have 6 or 7 different series.
I'm just overwhelmed a bit because of the timeline. So I want to keep things like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you want to say, okay, what did I say in the 1st book? You have to make sure.
Yes.
Right? Because now I'm on the 2nd book and I said, oh, wait, what did I say about this character in the 1st book? I have to look back and put little Post-it notes. They had black hair. I'm not going to, right?
Yes, unless you're going to explain that she had it stripped and dyed, you're going to have to keep her hair that color. I'll tell you that. So, because I have several series and sometimes I'll revisit them. I actually do what they call a story Bible.
Okay.
And so like in Excel spreadsheet, I will go through and kind of list all the characters and like their hair color, their eye color, what it is that they do with that or this, and just to like give me a quick reference.
That's a good idea, rather than writing it everywhere. And I like that idea.
Yeah, I'm really bad at writing it everywhere because I'll have like 22 sticky notes and I'm like,
which one is it?
No, I can't find the one that I need. And so it is nice to just kind of, and it doesn't have to be an Excel spreadsheet if you don't like those. People also make them in like Microsoft Word. They do it in Google Docs. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it, just to keep it kind of on track.
Yeah, because that would be my first attempt, right, at doing this kind of writing. So it's challenging for me. I mean, it's challenging because I've never done a series like that.
Right.
And you introduce the characters, and I've read series, so I enjoy reading series because it keeps you going. And the 30 word count is always exciting because you can finish it quickly. So that's the difference between writing novels and poetry. So when you're writing novels, I mean, it takes you years and sometimes weeks and sometimes months, depending on the novels. Like if they're, most of mine are pretty big. This is the first time I wrote something short, 30 word count. Like, wow, you know, that's the first time ever. And that was a bit easier to do because, you know, it's like literally it's on my Word. It was 70 pages on my Google Docs. It wasn't that difficult to do. People are gonna think, oh, that 70 pages might take somebody a long time to write, but it didn't take me that long to write. And
it's interesting that some people actually struggle with 30,000 words because it's too short, but I like both. I even do sometimes 20,000 because it's like a vignette, so it's like a quick story. It has a beginning, a middle, and end, but it's like boom, 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 and you don't have a lot of room for like subplots and additional things going on. You're very focused on the story. But I have talked with some people who are like, oh, I can't write anything under 90,000.
Well,
and I'm like, okay.
I know because this is the deal with that.
Yeah,
mine is maybe 36. Okay, it was supposed to be 30. It went over. but it's like, you know, when you write a 500 word short literary fiction, little, you know, memoir piece. Let's say
just to like a memory.
You know, a little memoir flash, 300 words, right? Like I used to write in school, and you have to put everything in. You have to make sure you select the right word choice, and you know, that's what it is, descriptive. So you can write in 30K words and you can make it powerful with a punch. Yeah, but it's the editing process. Like you have to get rid of all that was extra words. That you know, you want to make it more exactly. Be selective, and that's hard. Right. I find that's hard. It is. It's not easy. Nothing is easy. Just because you're 30K. I mean, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that some people get hung up on, because like this podcast for me is encouraging everyone that wants to write, and that there are as many ways to do this as there are people doing it. And so I really like to have a variety of different things that people are talking about. So I haven't really talked much about shorter novellas or series yet throughout the podcast. And so that's a great perspective to come from, you know, is that you can write a 50,000 word story and take it down to 30. You can also write a 30 and take it up to 50. And I think, you know, either way is fine as long as you're telling the story the way that you feel it needs to be told. That's so right. How then do you decide if something is a poem as opposed to a novel? Like, does it come to you as a poem and you just know that that's what you're doing this time?
Look, I write a lot of poems. I write so poetry just comes natural to me from a young age, high school. And when I'm writing, it's the line breaks. You know, you're writing a poem, or you know exactly when to end the poem and when to begin. And you can write it in 10 seconds, in 1 minute, in 5 minutes, and it's done, right? Yes. But then you go back to it and you edit it and you change a few things, and then that's very rewarding, I find, because it's done. Okay. I did something today. I wrote a poem. You know, writing a novel takes
a little longer. But
I have to be honest with you, putting together a whole poetry book takes a long time. It took me years. For 11
no doubt.
Yeah, you know, you have over 100
poems. Not one. Yeah, right. Yeah, if you have 100, you have to go through. And I know, like in some of the poetry books that I've read, you know, they're like broken into. It was very interesting. Well, I can't remember who the author was, but it was a poetry book and there were like 75 poems, but it was almost like the poems all together told one story.
Okay.
And I was fascinated by that because it was almost like you were going through the whole it wasn't one person. It was just it was like an arcing story over all 75, and the way that they were arranged within the poetry book was very deliberate, you could tell. So do you do that, or do you just kind of
Well,
like pick the ones
no,
that you think go together?
look, every single poetry book is different. So
Yeah.
the
Oh
latest
yeah.
one, that's the thing. So the latest one that I just wrote now, I don't have any parts like part 1, part 2, part 3. But the other one, Love and Vodka, I did a part 1, I did a part 2, I did a part 3, a part 4, and it had sections and it had themes. Whereas in this latest book, it's where the whole book is the theme, and Love and Vodka is the theme, right? It's the title. So every single, there's over 100 poems, I think 135, 140 poems.
Wow,
and
that's
story,
awesome.
that's it. And there's stories and narrative prose and free verse. So so they're stories, but in a poem, right? And it encompasses a lot of different themes like death, love, life, being Greek in a different culture, being a woman, being a mother. That's in general in all of my writing. But with different books, they all have different themes. So my first one was a little chapbook, little thin chapbook, and that was Your Ink on My Soul. That was the first poetry book I published.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, it was cute. And then the second one was In My Own Flood, and that too, I had different sections, and I had an illustrator who, for each section, she illustrated the poetry book, let's say. So for the first part, I had different titles, and I had Kate Theodosiou who did illustrations for each section. So it was a few sections. Yeah, it was really nice for her designs. And then the third one, Love and Vodka, it was pretty brutal parts, like let's say part 3 was Talk Dirty to Me, and that was all my erotic poems. The part was Modern Love, and that's all little clips and quotes of mine. So it's different. You can't always do the same stuff, right?
No.
And this is the Love and the Pax, the last one, the one that I just published. It's very narrative. There's a lot in here. It doesn't take you 5 minutes to read it.
Right.
It's a poetry book, but everybody loves the fact that they're stories, and it's more storytelling. Within a poem. So within one poem, I could go back to 1970, 1980, back to the future, back to the past, and in the present moment.
That is very cool.
Yeah. So it's and then also with my editor, Alexandra Meehan, we went through each poem, and we fixed the line break, added imagery. So with this book, I really gave a lot, because with an editor and poetry, it combined together, you just get a final outcome that you wouldn't even have expected yourself. Because the other poetry books, I didn't have an editor. So with this one, because I worked, and it took me years to get it together with her, because when you're working with an editor, it's like on her time, on your time, you're working, she's busy. So 2016, 17, when I was working on, it's been like 3 years, and it was almost published 3 times. So 3 different publishing companies picked it up the first time. He didn't open it up. He didn't end up opening up his publishing company. The second time was the pandemic. So the pandemic hit, they wrote me a letter. I'm sorry, we can't, publish your book. We don't have the funds. The third one, which was supposed to be published in March, she shut down her company and saying her too, due to personal reasons. So after 3 attempts, I said, that's it. I'm just going to do it myself.
It's mine now. It's mine now. Nobody else is allowed to touch it. I'm doing it.
I'm happy with it, because the formatting came out beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's what I'm happy with, because it was my full control.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Well, there is something about poetry books too. They're far, like a novel has a pretty standard format. And to me, poetry books can really be served well by mixing up the formatting to almost mirror the message that is in that particular poem. Like, you can start playing with cascading words and pictures around the words, and so having that kind of freedom to be like, oh wait, hold on, yes, we could just make it a stanza, or we could then the reader is getting a visual stimulation as well as the words.
That's right, because you can experiment with shape poetry. You can make words out of a shape. You can, with sonnets, you can change the formatting. I mean, there's so much you could do these days in poetry. It keeps on changing. And I even read a novel recently that the author, she didn't, and almost finished it, she didn't use any punctuation in her book. It's a novel. a whole like
Oh,
a
okay.
different character.
Wow.
Yeah, and no punctuation at all, and it was more prose and lowercase. So I mean, even writing in general is changing. I find the
Yes.
people are not just sticking to one method and one genre, and it always
Right.
keeps advancing. And literary fiction as well, right? That keeps changing. But the whole book was with no punctuation, and
Wow.
it was
That's
yeah, it felt prose poetic at the same
Yeah.
time. You're reading one humongous long poem, but
Yes.
it was like 300 pages.
Yeah.
And each character is a different character. So it was really
Right.
fascinating. I'm almost finished. I'm at the end, but it's not an easy
Okay.
read. It's not like, "Ooh, this is easy to read." It's a bit more literary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Well,
I
and
like
that's
people
I'm
experiment with novels, with
yes.
poetry these days. I find there's not just one, approach to writing,
Right.
which is great.
I
It
think
has to
that's
be that
awesome.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
great.
got to have some
Something
there's
different to offer.
variety in there, I think,
Yeah,
to, work with the material that you're working with. I don't know that I've ever read anything without punctuation, but I can see, depending on the kind of story that you're telling, that could work in its favor. You know what I
I
mean?
think
That
I
could be something that differentiates from other things that are being written.
That's it. Yeah, the book is next to me on my bed now. It just escaped me, the title. Bernadette. I forget
That's okay.
other woman, other. I'm blank right now. I
I
can't
got
remember.
you.
Old age, over 50, you forget.
You
When I
are
was young, I
not
would
over
remember
50.
everything.
You
Yeah,
cannot be over 50 years old.
yeah, I'm 52.
Holy crap. Can I look like you when I grow up? Because never, I would never have guessed that you
Really?
were even out of your, I don't even know that I would have thought
What?
you were like in your 40s.
Oh my God! Thank you so much. You made my
Wow.
night, my day. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you. Wow.
Goodness gracious. Okay. Well,
The Greek
let me,
genes. It's the Greek.
let me, yeah, seriously. Let me
Yeah,
reshape my head here because I would
because you're
never have guessed that. Good for you. That's
Thank you.
awesome. Well, and then you bring a lot of life experience into your
Well, that's it.
poetry. And
Because I'm older, right?
no, I
No,
just
no, I'm
mean
just kidding.
because we were talking a little bit before we got started recording, and you were saying, that your family, has different kinds of people in it, and that there are different languages that are spoken depending on who you're talking to. And so when you have those kinds of experiences, I think there's a richness that if you want to delve in and bring that into your writing, that it can really expand it into something that is completely different. You were saying
Well,
earlier that with your paranormals, you dove kind of into the Greek mythology. That's not a normal mythology that people dive into for vampires. And
exactly.
so that makes it different, which then makes it interesting.
Yeah, so like in my novel
Yeah,
Crush, what I did is I went into the Greek folklore and I looked into
love it.
what were vampires at that in that era or
Yeah,
that time. People think. So I
right.
found these words, Vakrik, Lokis, and all these interesting vocabulary words that I jotted down and I printed, and I said, I'm going to work with this a bit.
Yeah,
And I added my own kind of twist to it. And I used that terminology, and I used some words in Greek and some words in
yeah.
French because I speak French, and I know. So that adds a little bit more depth,
Flavor.
well, to your writing, right?
Yeah,
And finally you speak another language and you add a few words here and there, it makes it more
right.
interesting, and people are like, oh, okay, that's what is that word? Right? and
I
and
love that. I
it's
love that.
fun.
Yeah.
Like even now, the one that I wrote for 30K word count, I mean, the I was adding the French because it was in Paris, so I would add the
Oh,
words here and there, right?
yeah.
So people, I mean, it's not difficult to understand, but
Right.
still add a
You can
few
get
words,
it from the context of what's
yeah,
going
of
on.
what's
I
going
mean,
on.
but it gives it that flavor. You know what I mean? Like that,
Yep, that's it.
that's one of the things I love about reading in reading outside of my experience, I guess would be the best way to go about saying that. I love reading things that I have never experienced because I get to see it through somebody's eyes who is experiencing it sometimes for the first time, and I'm like, oh, how would I feel about that? Like, would I do that? Could I see myself doing that? Did she have another choice? I don't know if she had another choice. Let's see what happens next. And so, like, I am always very intrigued by stories that involve something that I have never experienced, simply because I get to learn something, but I generally get to have fun while I'm learning it.
That's it. So let's say I was telling you before we started, when I was young and I only spoke Greek at home, and
Yes.
then I went into kindergarten, and now suddenly everybody's speaking English, and
Mm,
I was quiet and shy, and I didn't know what
yeah.
to say. And then the language, but then you learn the language, you pick it up, and
Right.
then that became more of my first language, I would say. But like my
Right.
langue maternelle, which is like my mother tongue, that would be Greek. And then
Okay.
French you pick up as you go along. But when you read a poem in, let's say, or a novel in French, which I've read so many, and then in Greek, which I've read, and English, they all have something to offer you, which is different because of the
Yes.
language and the wording.
Yes.
There's words in French that for just a rock, there's about 5 different words just for that. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
amazing. Greek too. Greek is just a whole different vocabulary and language
Yes.
and alphabet, and it's very deep. The words they have a lot of meaning, and
Right.
I find an imagery in the
Yes.
Greek language that you can capture in English. I find
Mm.
it's the more basic English language, whereas
Right.
the French and the Greek language is a little bit more romantic and elevated.
Right.
Even when you read French poetry, and it's translated, it's
Yeah.
like, wow, it flows and it has all these organic words. But
Yeah.
so with languages and in my novels, I try, because it's what I know and how I write. I
Right.
try to put it in there a little bit. The character speaks a little French or a little
Yeah.
Greek. They're basically all Greek and French, but it's okay.
That's
Whatever.
that's okay. That's
Okay.
that's
People like
why
that.
we need your experiences for other people who haven't, and
That's
they
it.
can fall in love,
Yeah.
with the people that you have created from your past experiences. I mean,
That's it.
I think
Yeah.
even when you're writing a vampire novel, and
Yeah.
I don't think that the people who are not necessarily authors don't always think about this, but even when you're writing a vampire, look, there are plenty of things that people have written that they've never been. I write a lot of mystery novels. I have never killed anyone.
Yeah.
But I still, except on the page, I have also never I've never tried to solve a murder, I mean, except on the page. And so we have to step outside of ourselves to write regardless. But I think if you start with a basis of what your life has taught you, you then expand from things that you've already learned, which then allows you to share them with readers who are like fiending for what you've got to offer.
Or you use the internet and Google. When I decided in Crush to use Saint Tropez as the city. Like I've never been there. But I Googled, I researched, I found street names. I mean, with the internet, I find, and if you don't have that life experience, if you've never been to a certain city or place, you can go on Google and see the streets, and it's like you're there. It's crazy.
You get the flavor.
It doesn't have the same touch as actually being there and getting that sensation and that feeling, the 5 senses. But in essence, just going and Googling a city or the specific restaurants, the cafes, and you look at the pictures, you get a feel of it a bit. So it's easier to write in that character. And I mean, I created it was basically Saint Tropez, and and I just Googled it all.
I love it. Well, and so the location, I've done the same thing. Like I've done a location that I haven't necessarily been at before. I think a lot of my characters, though, stem from either people I know, people I have interacted with, people I've seen before. You can also, you research that on the internet. Like if you wanted to write a book about a cowboy and you had never met a cowboy before, I don't think that keeps you from being able to do that as long as you're willing to do the research. And it sounds like you are, so that's very cool.
Yeah, that's like when it comes to character development, definitely. And let's say their job or their position in their life. If one person I was writing is now the second book, he's like a fashion designer. I don't know much about that, so I was just Googling, what does a fashion designer do? What do they eat? I don't know. What do they drink? I I was watching YouTube videos, but
Good
it
for
gets
you.
and you learn so much about
Yes.
other, I guess, subjects
Life.
that, lifestyles
Yeah.
and how people live, and why
Yeah.
not? You know, I mean, it's
I think
crazy. We're in the house anyways, writing. Might as well learn something.
exactly. I love it. I love it. And that's
Yeah.
you know, the Gabby Allen book that just came out. She drives a glass bottom boat. I've never driven a
Wow.
glass bottom boat, but I've been on a glass bottom boat.
Okay.
So I called the guy on Catalina Island off of California, and I said, okay, so he's like, how can I help you? And I'm like, well, I'm an author. And he's like, okay. I said, so I'm writing a book about somebody who drives a glass bottom boat. And he's like, oh, okay. What do you need? And I was like, how long is it? Does it get bumpy? Is it something that you like? What do you do about this? What do you do? And he's like, wow.
Oh my
I
God.
never thought about all the things that you're asking. He said, I just do stuff because that is my training. And so he's going to make snap decisions that I'm going to have to ask about because that's not going to be in my.
Hold on.
No worries.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Don't even worry about it. But so there are things that like he does instinctually and does them because he's done them for so long that it just happens. It's not something he has to think about. That when I was asking him questions, he was like, oh, well, I mean, this is the way I do that, but I think it's because I've always done it that way. And then like, did anybody teach you that? He was like, you might have to call back tomorrow. I'm going to have to think about some of this stuff. So I actually ended up sending him an email and saying, these are the things that I'm interested in. I probably used 50% of them. Do you find that when you're researching, you don't necessarily use everything you've found, but it just gives you like that base to jump off of?
I definitely feel the same way. Like I research so much and I print out so much that in the end, I'll use one or two items that I found interesting. And right now, what I do presently is I don't even print them out anymore. I'll just jot little notes down. And in the past, I would print stuff, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Oh, so would I. I'd have like 20 pages. I had all of these like 3-ring binders, and I would make the holes in them. I'd put them in, and I'd be like, oh, I know there was. And I was like, okay, look, you got to stop doing that because you just went through like 7 reams of paper, and you're going to end up shredding all of it because you haven't used anything except like these 2 little pieces. You know what? I think, I mean, especially as an author, you know, it's a process. You know, you get into what you're doing. Sometimes it does take, your first book will take several years to write because you're learning as you're going. And then the farther along you get on the journey, the more you learn. I think kind of like the glass bottom boat guy, we start doing things instinctually. You will like run through the Google doc or run through the Google search and you'll be like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Whereas before you would have like taken everything. Now your brain is like trained to pick up on the couple of things that are going to work for you.
Yeah. I find that when it comes to researching characters, a lot of the times they're just in my head and I don't know where they come from. And I think, oh, maybe it's that person that I met one time at a party, you know, or this is a good person that I could write a book about. And, I'm a good listener. I don't know about you, but I'm a really good listener. And people tell me stories. I don't know why.
I think we have something on our forehead that says, please tell me everything. Cause like I'd be in an elevator and we're on like the 30th floor. And by the first floor, I know everything about you. And I'm like, have a great day. I don't remember what your first name is, but thanks. I know everything else.
No, you know? I find even recently I went to this little getaway and one of the girls there, she told me so much about her life and, you know, her relationships and I could write a book about your life. You know, I could just change the characters around. This is so much information. Thank you for sharing all this. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying.
No, I got you.
But that people can tell you, and then sometimes it just sticks in your brain, and you think, okay, I have to remember that, or I'll be walking my dog, and I'll think of something, and I'm like, okay, I start talking to my phone, and don't forget this, you know. And the mind, it never really stops. I find it just goes on, and You can just create. I was just, at least me. The other day I was walking the dog, and I got this idea for a book, and I said, let me start thinking about this idea. But that's going to
Absolutely.
stay on my phone for a while until I'm finished with all the other projects.
I think that's one of our biggest issues sometimes is too many ideas. You can't actually have too many ideas. I think I want ideas straight through to, when I eventually, become a vampire. But I so that I can continue writing. But I feel like I don't ever want to run out. So I'm fine with there being extras, but there are some that I'm like, oh, when am I going to be done with this? Because I really want to jump into that.
Yeah,
Do
I know.
you find that?
Well, that's what I'm working on like now, because I jumped into this 30K series like out of the blue, very impulsive, a little impulsive.
Okay,
but
all right.
Because I was going with that, oh, I have this vision. Let me do this now, and I was writing and writing and writing, and it was just going. It came out.
Yeah.
But I have that long project, the novel that I've been working on and off for the last couple of years that I really want to, do right as well. But now I find it takes a lot of time, and like the summer I'm off, I'm not working, so I can devote some time. But then the year comes along, and then you're working, and you're and you're teaching. It takes a lot of energy to teach. As well, so I'm tired, but I try to do it at night, or during break, or like early in the morning, stuff like that. But there's the mind never stops, and the ideas are always coming to me, and I find that's overwhelming, and I need a break from everything.
Yes. Yes, I totally understand.
You get it, right? And I'm just like, on top of that, and you have to get that I'm also writing poetry. So it's not just a novel, it's the fact that the poems come to me too.
Well, and that's, I think for anyone who doesn't read a lot of poetry, I don't think it's not the poetry that you read in high school. It's rarely the poetry that you read in high school. It's a very it has different format, it has different forms. Like you were saying, you can do a bunch of different stuff. But if you have 140 poems coming to you, that's 140 different stories. And it's a different process. No, it's not 90,000 words. No, it's not, I wrote 5,000 words a day for 10 days and now I have a 50,000 word novel and I take shape. It's like, okay, that was 200 words, that was 50 words, that was 75, now we've got a 300. And it's a lot of different pieces of you going on to paper that you then have to invest in each one of them individually.
Yes. You know what? It's really not easy to do that either.
No.
It's easy to write. I find when the writing process comes easy, but then when it comes to editing, it's the editing that's always harder for me. I don't know. As a writer, I struggle with editing a lot.
That's okay.
That's why I have an editor, because if I would have to edit my own stuff, I reread things over and over again. I think, okay, something's not right, but I just would like somebody to whisper in my ear, oh, change that word or that sentence, or you have those tags again,
Yeah, that one's okay. Leave it.
Oh God.
Oh, well, funny enough, we're almost done with our time. That flew by.
I know, it did fly by. It was so nice to talk to you. I loved it.
Yes, this was wonderful. I do want to make sure that everybody can find you though. So where can we find you, and then what's coming out next?
Okay, so Twitter is my number one. So I'm always tweeting. It's at Christina Striga. There's no S. Okay, so it's Christina Striga for my Twitter, and Instagram. I'm always putting stuff on Instagram. It's C_Strigas _sexy ass poet. Don't ask. There's a long story to that.
I love that.
It's my niece that did that. Yeah. Instagram account back a few years ago. Yeah. And then basically that's where I'm on Facebook as well. Christina Strigas author. And that just is linked. So I'm not very active, but everything is linked from my Instagram. Yeah. Yeah. And I have my book is coming out September 27th.
I know. I'm excited.
And yeah, that's my latest. And then after that, October 13, Crush, the paranormal romance.
Okay.
Those are the two books coming out right now.
Going to be awesome. And you have a website?
And I have a website, ChristinaStrigas.com. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was wandering around over there, and it is very nice. It is a
Thank
very
you.
well put together website. I really like it, and I
Thank
like
you.
the flow.
I recently updated it. I
Oh,
hired somebody to help me with it because the old one on WordPress, I
not
wasn't
so
really
much.
happy with it because it was on my own doing, because when I started my blog like 10 years
Yeah.
ago, it was just my own blog, right? So whatever I learned off the internet, but I wanted to make it a little bit more professional looking, and I
Yeah.
added tiny letter dot so I'll also do little emails with
Oh,
tiny
okay.
letter. I'll send out little emails to people once. I try to do it once a week,
Yeah.
and so subscribe to my email on my christinastrigas.com, and then you'll get little love notes from me.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah,
I love it.
thank you.
That is very, very cool. Well, it has been such a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you on here. I am so thrilled that
Me too. I
you
love having.
that
I love
you
being. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me.
absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. My pleasure. And you are more than welcome to come back on. So
Oh,
when
super.
if you want to
Great.
do something, like in next year, like or towards the end of this year, let us know how you're doing and stuff.
Okay.
I am totally open to having you back on. This was
Cool.
a
I love
blast.
it. Cool.
Absolutely. So we're gonna
Okay.
say goodbye. This
Bye.
was Out on a Limb with Gabby Allen and Christina, and we have had a blast. I'm so glad you were here to listen with us, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
You too. Thank
Thank
you.
you.